The grand hall of New Delhi's International Conference Center sparkled with lights and excitement. Humans from all nations stood alongside the tall, blue-skinned Kildorians who had arrived from the stars. 5 years after their scouts first found Earth, the Kildorian Galactic Alliance was finally making official first contact. Captain Arizoth, the most famous Kildorian military leader, stood at the center of it all. His skin was darker blue than the others, and the metal badges on his chest showed he had won many battles. "We welcome our friends from Earth to the greater galactic community," Arizoth said, his translator making his clicking language into perfect English. "Our worlds have much to share." Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's best alien language expert, watched him closely. She noticed how the Kildorians held themselves stiffly, as if they were trying hard not to touch anything human. After the speeches, everyone sat down to eat. The humans had prepared special foods that both species could enjoy. As the night went on, the mood became more relaxed. An old Indian professor began telling stories from ancient Hindu myths. He spoke of gods who could take many forms, of magical weapons, and worlds beyond our own. Other humans joined in, sharing tales of dragons, fairies, and monsters from their own cultures. Elena noticed the Kildorians exchanging looks. Their large, four-pupilled eyes blinked rapidly, their version of laughter. They thought the stories were silly. One young Kildorian whispered to another, not realizing Elena could understand their language. "They actually believe stars are living beings who watch over them. How did these primitives ever build spaceships?" Elena's face grew hot. She stood up and walked over to their table. "I couldn't help overhearing your comments," she said in perfect Kildorian. The aliens froze in surprise. "These stories may seem like just myths to you, but they helped shape our cultures and our understanding of the universe." Captain Arizoth recovered quickly. "Dr. Vasquez, you speak our language very well. Please understand, we mean no disrespect. It's just that Kildorians left such imaginative thinking behind 5 centuries ago. We believe only in what can be measured and proven." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Really? So there's nothing in your experience that science can't explain? No mysteries at all?" "Of course not," Arizoth said confidently. "Everything has a logical explanation. I saw it." The voice was deep and quiet. Everyone turned to look at Commander Thelox, the most decorated war hero in Kildorian history. His scarred face was serious, his 4 eyes fixed on Elena. "Commander?" Arizoth asked, clearly confused. "I said, I saw it," Thelox repeated. "What you humans would call unexplainable." The room went silent. The other Kildorians looked shocked. Some seemed angry, others afraid. "Perhaps," Thelox continued, looking at each human and Kildorian in turn, "we are not so different after all." Elena smiled slightly. This first contact had just become much more interesting. The banquet hall fell completely silent. Captain Arizoth's face darkened to a deep navy blue, the Kildorian sign of anger. "Commander Thelox," Arizoth said in a tight voice, "perhaps this isn't the right time for your personal stories." Thelox's scared face remained calm, his 4 pupils fixed steadily on Arizoth. "If not now, when? We mock these humans for their myths, yet I have seen things our science cannot explain." Elena Vasquez stepped closer. "Please, Commander, we would like to hear your experience." The other Kildorian officers shifted uncomfortably. A young lieutenant named Zirex snorted. "The commander has been in too many battles. His mind plays tricks." Thelox slammed his 3-fingered hand on the table. The dishes jumped. 20 cycles ago," he began, ignoring his fellow officers' protests, "I was on a solo scouting mission to the planet we call Darkwater. My ship crashed in the northern mountains. I was alone, waiting for rescue. The humans leaned forward, captivated. Even the protesting Kildorians fell quiet. On the 3rd night, I saw a light moving across the valley. I thought it might be locals, so I hid. But it wasn't locals." Thelox paused. It was a beam made of light. It floated above the ground. When it touched trees, they changed color. When it touched rocks, they moved. A hallucination from lack of oxygen, Lieutenant Zirex whispered loudly. Thelox continued as if he hadn't heard. It saw me. It came to me. It stood before me, and I felt it looking into my mind. And then what happened? Elena asked softly. It vanished, simply disappeared. But where it had stood, there was a small stone tablet with markings I had never seen before. I took it with me when I was rescued. Captain Arizoth laughed nervously. And where is this tablet now, Commander? Surely you kept such important evidence. The Science Ministry confiscated it, Thelox said flatly. They told me it was just a natural formation. They ordered me never to speak of what I saw. Because it never happened. Lieutenant Zirex said loudly. The great commander has finally lost his mind. Thelox reached inside his uniform and pulled out a small data drive. I expected that response. So I kept this. He placed the drive on the table and tapped it. A hologram appeared above the table, a perfect 3D image of a stone tablet covered in strange symbols. Some looked like ancient Earth writing. I scanned it before they took it, Thelox said quietly. I've broken the law by keeping this, but I know what I saw. Dr. Vasquez stepped closer, studying the symbols. Some of these look like Proto-Sanskrit, she whispered. And these others, they appear in cave paintings from 30,000 years ago. Suddenly, the lights in the banquet hall flickered. A cold breeze swept through the room, though all windows were closed. In the corner of the room, a security camera turned by itself, pointing directly at Thelox. It appears, Elena said, looking at the camera, that someone, or something, is listening to us. Captain Arizoth's face had turned pale blue with fear. This meeting is over, he announced. But no one moved to leave. They were all watching the camera as it slowly turned to point at each person in the room. 3 days after the strange events at the banquet, the Kildorian mothership prepared to leave Earth. A small group of human diplomats, including Dr. Elena Vasquez, had been invited to visit the Kildorian homeworld. Elena stood at the viewing window of the massive ship, watching Earth grow smaller below them. She felt someone approach and turned to find Commander Thelox standing beside her. Beautiful, isn't it? She said, pointing to Earth. Yes, Thelox agreed. Few planets have such blue oceans. Ours are purple. They stood in silence for a moment before Thelox spoke again. Dr. Vasquez, have you experienced any unusual events since the banquet? Elena hesitated, then nodded. My computer turned on by itself last night. The screen showed symbols like those on your tablet. When I tried to take a picture, they disappeared. Thelox's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. The same happened in my quarters. And there's more. He looked around to make sure they were alone. I've been researching Earth myths. The light being I saw on Darkwater appears in human stories too. You call them angels, spirits, or gods. And you think they're the same thing? Elena asked. I think there are things in the universe that both our species have encountered but cannot explain, Thelox said. Captain Arizoth and the others refused to see it. As if summoned by his name, Captain Arizoth appeared at the end of the corridor. His face darkened when he saw them together. Commander, he said coldly, you should be preparing for the jump to hyperspace, not filling our guest's head with nonsense. We were discussing cultural similarities, Captain, Elena said smoothly. Of course, Arizoth replied, not believing her. Commander, report to the bridge immediately. After Thelox left, Arizoth moved closer to Elena. Dr. Vasquez, I must warn you. Commander Thelox is a great war hero, but his mind has been affected by his many battles. His stories could damage relations between our worlds. I'm just interested in all perspectives, Captain, Elena said. Later that day, Elena was in her quarters when her tablet chimed. A message from Thelox appeared. Meet me in Section 7, Storage Room B. Important discovery. When she arrived, Thilox was waiting with a small projector. "Look at this," he said, activating it. A 3D image of an ancient Kildorian painting appeared. It showed blue figures bowing before a being made of light. "This is from a temple on my world," Thilox explained. "It's over 5,000 years old. Our science ministry keeps it locked away, saying it's just primitive art." Alina gasped. "It looks exactly like what you described seeing." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The storage room door slammed shut by itself. On the wall, shadows formed shapes that looked like written words, then faded away. "They're watching us," Thilox whispered. "They know we're connecting the pieces." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Security alert. Unauthorized meeting in Section 7. All officers report." "Arizov," Thilox growled. "He's been spying on us." "What do we do now?" Alina asked. Thilox's scared face hardened with determination. "We find more proof. On my world, there's a place where ancient records are kept. Records our government doesn't want anyone to see." "Is it dangerous?" Alina asked. Thilox nodded. "Very. But I think something wants us to find the truth. Something powerful." As if in answer, the shadows on the wall briefly formed a doorway shape before fading again. The great Kildorian ship moved through hyperspace, its engines humming softly. Deep inside the ship, Alina and Commander Thilox had managed to avoid Captain Arizov for 2 days. They were hidden in a small maintenance room that few people visited. "We should be safe here," Thilox said, touching a panel on the wall. A hidden door slid open. "This is one of the ship's secret archives. Only high commanders know about it." Alina's eyes widened as they entered a small room filled with old books and data crystals. "What is all this?" "Our true history," Thilox explained. "Every Kildorian ship carries copies of the ancient records, though most officers never see them." They spent hours searching through the materials. Alina found she could understand some of the old Kildorian writing because of her language training. "Look at this," she finally called out. She held an ancient book with faded blue pages. "This tells of light visitors who came to Kildoria thousands of years ago." Thilox checked the date on the book. "This is from before the Great Rationalization, when our leaders decided to remove all superstitious nonsense from our history." Alina pointed to a drawing in the book. "These symbols match the ones on your tablet. And look, they match some ancient human writing too." Thilox's 4 eyes blinked in excitement. "This proves both our species encountered the same beings." Suddenly, the door slid open. Captain Arizov stood there with 4 security guards. "Stealing classified materials," Arizov said coldly. "A serious crime, Commander." "These aren't classified," Thilox argued. "They're our history, a history you and the leadership have hidden from our people." Arizov ignored him, turning to Alina. "And you, Dr. Vasquez, spying on behalf of Earth." "I'm just seeking the truth," Alina said firmly. "Take them to their quarters," Arizov ordered the guards. "They are not to leave until we reach Kildoria." Later that night, Alina sat on her bed, feeling trapped and worried. Suddenly, the air in the center of her room began to shimmer and glow. She backed away as the light took shape, a tall, humanoid figure made of golden light. It floated a few inches above the floor, looking at her with eyes that seemed impossibly deep. It raised a hand toward her, then pointed to the floor where a small stone tablet now lay. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the light being vanished. With shaking hands, Alina picked up the tablet. It was cool to the touch and covered in symbols, some ancient Kildorian, some that looked like Earth's oldest writing. At the center was a map showing what looked like a place on Kildoria. Her door chimed. When she opened it, a nervous-looking Thilox stood there. "Did you see it?" he whispered. Alina nodded, showing him the tablet. "It left this." Thilox pulled out an identical tablet from his pocket. "I received this one 20 years ago, after my encounter. I've never been able to translate it fully." He compared the two tablets. They're different parts of the same message. A voice came over the ship's intercom. "Attention all crew. We will reach Kildoria in 6 hours. Prepare for arrival procedures." Thelox looked at Alina with determination. "When we land, we need to find what these tablets are pointing to before Arizov stops us." The Kildorian ship landed smoothly on the massive landing pad in Rationalis, the capital city of Kildoria. Alina stood with the other human delegates, amazed by the towering crystal buildings that reached toward the purple sky. Everything looked perfect, too perfect, like a city built by machines rather than living beings. Captain Arizov led the humans toward a large welcome party of Kildorian officials. "Distinguished guests from Earth, welcome to our homeworld," he announced proudly. "You are the first humans to set foot on Kildoria." Alina noticed how Arizov kept her separated from Commander Thelox. Whenever she tried to approach the commander, security officers would politely but firmly guide her back to the main group. The Kildorian High Council, 5 elderly blue aliens with elaborate silver markings on their faces, greeted each human personally. When they reached Alina, the eldest council member studied her carefully. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "We understand you have a special interest in cultural exchange." The way he said the words made Alina feel uneasy. "Yes, counselor. I believe our worlds have much to learn from each other." "Indeed," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his 4 eyes. The humans were given a tour of Rationalis. Their guide, a young female Kildorian named Silith, proudly explained the city's history. 500 years ago, during our great rationalization, we rebuilt our cities based purely on science and logic, Silith explained. We removed all elements of primitive thinking. But Alina noticed something strange. In some of the oldest buildings, she saw patterns and designs that seemed out of place, circular symbols and flowing curves that matched those on the stone tablets. "What are those markings?" Alina asked, pointing to a stone archway. Silith looked uncomfortable. "Just old decorations. They have no meaning." Later that evening, Alina sat alone in her guest quarters, studying her tablet. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find a small Kildorian child standing there. "Are you Dr. Vasquez?" the child whispered. When Alina nodded, the child handed her a folded note. "Commander Thelox says to meet him at midnight. Follow these instructions." At midnight, Alina slipped out of her room and followed the directions on the note. She moved through dark, empty streets until she reached an old section of the city that looked abandoned. Thelox emerged from the shadows. "Sorry for the secrecy. We're being watched." He led her to what looked like a solid wall. Thelox pressed his hand against certain spots in a pattern, and a hidden door appeared. "Welcome," he said, "to the sanctuary." Inside, Alina gasped. The room was filled with ancient Kildorian artifacts, statues, books, and paintings showing the light beings. Several older Kildorians stood waiting. "This is Elder Vrixis," Thelox said, introducing a very old Kildorian with faded blue skin. "He leads those who preserve our true history." "We've waited a long time for this day," Vrixis said to Alina, "when humans and Kildorians would rediscover the truth together." "What truth?" Alina asked. Vrixis pointed to a large stone door at the far end of the room. "The truth that what both our species call myths are actually encounters with beings from beyond our dimension. Beings who have guided both our worlds for thousands of years." The stone door began to glow with the same golden light Alina had seen in her quarters. "They're here," Vrixis whispered, "and they've been waiting for you." The glowing stone door slowly opened. Alina held her breath, expecting to see one of the light beings. Instead, she saw a small room with walls covered in the same symbols from the tablets. "This is our most sacred place," Elder Vrixis explained. "For centuries, we've protected these writings." Alina stepped inside, touching the wall gently. "I can recognize some of these. They match ancient writing from Earth," Sanskrit, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and others. Thelox nodded excitedly. The beings visited both our worlds, leaving the same messages. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the sanctuary. Elder Vrixis looked at a small screen on his wrist. Security forces are coming. Someone betrayed our location. Thelox's face darkened. Arizoth. He must have followed us. We need to leave now, Vrixis said urgently. He pressed a hidden panel, and part of the floor slid open, revealing a dark stairway. These tunnels run beneath the entire city. They're from before the Great Rationalization, when our people still built according to the old ways. The tunnels shouldn't exist according to official records, Thelox explained to Elena as they hurried down the stairs. Our government denies they're real. The tunnels were dark and dusty, lit only by small blue lights along the walls. Elena noticed the tunnel walls had patterns carved into them, circles and flowing lines that looked like the patterns she had seen in ancient human temples. These designs, she whispered, they're like sacred geometry from Earth. Behind them, they heard voices and the heavy footsteps of security forces entering the sanctuary. Vrixis led them deeper into the maze of tunnels. The patterns help us navigate, the old Kildorian explained. Those who know how to read them can find their way. They ran through the twisting passages for what felt like hours. Several times they heard search teams behind them. Once, they barely hid in time as guards passed just feet away from them. We're trapped, Thelox said finally. They've blocked the exits ahead, and they're closing in behind us. Helena pulled out her tablet. Maybe these can help us. She held her stone tablet next to Thelox. Together, the symbols formed a complete pattern. It's a map, Vrixis said in wonder, but not of any place I know. Elena placed both tablets against a blank wall where the tunnel ended. The stones began to glow, and to everyone's amazement, a doorway of light appeared in the solid wall. That's impossible, Thelox whispered. Behind them, they heard shouting. Captain Arizoth's voice echoed through the tunnels. Find them. The human must not learn more. We have no choice, Elena said, stepping toward the light doorway. Thelox hesitated. We don't know where it leads. Sometimes, Elena said, reaching for his hand, you have to believe in things you can't explain. Together, they stepped through the doorway of light. There was a blinding flash and a sensation of falling. When Elena could see again, she gasped in shock. They were standing in what looked like a control room. Through a large window, she could see the curved surface of a gray, cratered world. That's Earth's moon, she whispered. How did we get here? A voice spoke behind them. Welcome to the confluence. They turned to see a being made of golden light. Elena and Thelox stared at the being of light. Unlike the glimpses they had seen before, this one remained solid and clear. It had a humanoid shape, but no clear features, just pure golden light in the rough form of a tall person. Do not be afraid, the light being said, its voice sounding like many voices speaking together. You are safe here. Elena found her voice first. What is this place? What are you? The light being gestured around the room. This is the confluence, a place where many paths meet. As Elena's eyes adjusted, she noticed they weren't alone. Around the large circular room stood a dozen other beings, but not light beings. These were aliens of different species, each holding stone tablets like the ones Elena and Thelox carried. You are not the first to find us, the light being explained. Representatives from many worlds have discovered the truth we left for them to find. A tall, thin alien with green skin stepped forward. I am Zenthar, from the Proxima system, he said in a surprisingly human-like voice. Like you, I followed the signs left by the Architects. The Architects? Thelox asked. That is what we call them, Zenthar explained, pointing to the light being. They have guided the development of intelligent life across the galaxy. Another alien, short with 6 arms and purple fur, joined them. Every species that reaches the stars eventually encounters evidence of the Architects, she said. Most, like the Kildorians, try to suppress this knowledge. They prefer to believe they achieved everything on their own. Elena looked around in wonder. So this organization, the Confluence, studies the architects. We do more than study, Zenthar said. We work with them. They have knowledge far beyond our science. Meanwhile, back on Kildoria, Captain Arizoth stood before the Kildorian High Council, his head bowed in shame. You lost them, the head counselor asked, his voice cold with anger. They disappeared, Counselor, Arizoth explained. A doorway of light appeared in the wall. It's not my fault. This is exactly what we feared, another counselor said. The human has connected with the beings we've worked for centuries to erase from our history. The head counselor turned to his screen showing the severe-looking Kildorian in a black uniform. Director Kraz, activate protocol silence. The human must be eliminated before she can tell others what she's learned. On the screen, Director Kraz nodded. And Commander Thelox. Him too, the head counselor said without hesitation. No witnesses. But as Arizoth left the council chamber, he felt troubled. For 500 years, his people had denied what they couldn't explain. They had erased their own history, and now they planned to kill innocent people to protect that lie. In his quarters that night, Arizoth accessed his family records, something he hadn't done in years. He scrolled back through his ancestors until he found a name. General Vorex, his great-great-grandfather. The record showed Vorex had been part of the original council that ordered the Great Rationalization. What did you help hide? Arizoth whispered. Suddenly, his computer screen changed. Strange symbols appeared, the same symbols from the tablets. And in the corner of his room, a faint golden light began to glow. Back at the Confluence base on Earth's moon, Elena worked with aliens from a dozen different worlds. Each species had their own name for the architects, gods, spirits, angels, or star visitors. But their stories were remarkably similar. It's amazing, Elena said, looking at the images on a large screen. The architects appeared to each of our species, but we saw them differently. Humans saw gods and spirits. Kildorians saw technological angels, but they were the same beings all along. Zenthar, the tall green alien, nodded. We've been studying the pattern of their appearances. Look at this. He showed Elena a chart with dates from various worlds. The architects don't appear randomly. They follow a cycle based on radiation bursts from the center of our galaxy. These bursts happen every 513 years. When is the next burst due? Thelox asked. Zenthar looked serious. According to our calculations, within the next 7 days. What happens during these bursts? Elena wondered. A small purple alien named Miri explained. The barrier between dimensions weakens. The architects can interact with our reality more easily. In the past, they've used these opportunities to guide developing species. Meanwhile, on Kildoria, Captain Arizoth stood frozen as the golden light in his room took shape. It was an architect, just like the ones in the forbidden stories. The being didn't speak with words. Instead, images flowed into Arizoth's mind. His ancestor, General Vorex, meeting with an architect 500 years ago. Vorex had been given a choice: accept guidance from the architects or follow a path of pure scientific development alone. Vorex chose science and ordered all evidence of the architects erased. The Kildorians advanced quickly but lost something important along the way: the understanding that not everything can be explained or controlled. When the vision ended, Arizoth knew what he had to do. He accessed the most restricted government files about the architects, downloading everything to a small data crystal. As he finished, his door burst open. Director Kraz stood there with armed guards. Captain Arizoth, you are accessing forbidden files, Kraz said coldly. That's treason. Arizoth grabbed his weapon. The real treason was hiding the truth from our people for 5 centuries. He fired at the ceiling, creating confusion, then jumped through the window of his high-rise apartment. His military training activated his emergency flight pack just in time. As security forces fired at him, Arizov flew toward the spaceport. He needed to reach Earth and warn the confluence. Back on the moon base, alarms suddenly blared. A confluence technician announced, "We're detecting multiple ships leaving Kildoria. They're heading toward Earth." Thelox looked at the tactical display. "That's a battle fleet. They're coming to silence us, permanently." Elena studied the radiation readings on another screen. "And look, the cosmic radiation is already increasing. The dimensional barrier is weakening." Senthar turned to them urgently. "We've built a device based on the combined knowledge of all our species. It might allow clear communication with the architects during the radiation burst." "But will it be ready in time?" Elena asked. Mary looked worried. "We need 3 more days. If the Kildorian fleet reaches Earth before then humanity will be blamed for spreading dangerous myths." Thelox finished grimly. "And your world could pay the price." 3 days passed quickly at the confluence base. Elena barely slept as she helped the team finish the communication device. It was a large circular platform covered in symbols from every member species' ancient writings. "The Kildorian fleet will reach Earth orbit in 12 hours, Thelox announced grimly as he studied the tracking screens. Senthar nodded. "And the cosmic radiation is reaching peak levels. We must activate the device today." Suddenly, alarms blared. A small ship was approaching the moon base at high speed. "It's a Kildorian shuttle," one technician called out. "But it's sending a friendship signal." When the shuttle landed, everyone was shocked to see Captain Arizov step out, his uniform torn and dirty. Thelox immediately drew his weapon. "Wait." Arizov held up empty hands. "I'm here to help. I've seen the truth." He showed them the data crystal. "This contains all the classified Kildorian files about the architects. The High Council plans to attack Earth, claiming humans have corrupted our culture with dangerous myths." Elena studied him carefully. "Why the sudden change, Captain?" Arizov looked down. "An architect showed me the truth. My own ancestor helped hide our real history. I can't be part of that lie anymore." The confluence leaders gathered to discuss their options. "Even with Arizov's help, we can't stop a battle fleet," Miri said worriedly. Thelox had an idea. "But what if we could reach the Kildorian crews directly? Many of them must be seeing architect manifestations already as the radiation increases." "A broadcast to all ships," Elena said excitedly, showing them their own hidden history. They quickly created a message using Arizov's files. Thelox recorded a personal plea to his fellow Kildorians, asking them to remember their true past. As the Kildorian fleet approached Earth, strange phenomena began appearing on every ship. Instruments failed, strange lights moved through corridors, and many crew members reported seeing beings made of golden light. Admiral Vox, the fleet commander, was losing control. "Ignore these hallucinations," he ordered. "Prepare weapons to target human population centers." But on the bridge of his flagship, a junior officer stood up. "Sir, I can't follow that order. I've seen them too, the beings from our ancient stories. Commander Thelox is telling the truth." One by one, other officers joined him. Across the fleet, crews began questioning their orders. At that moment, the confluence activated their broadcast. Every screen on every Kildorian ship showed images of their own ancient history, the temples, the writings, the art showing the architects guiding their ancestors. Then, as the cosmic radiation reached its peak, Elena and the others activated the communication device on the moon. The circular platform began to glow with golden light, swirling upward to form a perfect sphere. Inside the sphere, a figure appeared, an architect in its true form, neither human nor Kildorian, but something beyond both. For the first time, representatives of all species could see it clearly. "The time of separation is ending," it said, its voice reaching every mind on Earth, on the Kildorian ships, and across the confluence. "We have guided many paths, but now those paths must join. Above Earth, Admiral Vox watched in awe as golden light spread from ship to ship across his fleet. The architect's light filled the space around Earth. On the Kildorian ships, Admiral Vox ordered his fleet to stand down. Weapons systems powered off as the golden light touched each vessel. "We have watched over many worlds for millions of years," the architect said, its voice gentle yet powerful in everyone's minds. "Each species receives our guidance in ways they can understand. To humans, we appeared as gods and spirits. To Kildorians, as technological angels." In the confluence space, Alina and Thelox stood side by side, watching in wonder. "Why did you guide us separately?" Alina asked. "Each species must find their own path first," the architect explained. "But there comes a time when paths must join. That time is now." The architect raised what looked like a hand. "We offer a gift, a glimpse of what lies beyond." Suddenly, Alina, Thelox, and every human and Kildorian felt their minds expand. For a brief moment, they could see reality as the architects saw it, a universe with many more dimensions than the three they knew, where time flowed in multiple directions, and where thought and matter were not separate things. In that moment, countless scientific mysteries were solved. Theories that scientists had struggled with for centuries suddenly made sense. The gaps between science and mythology vanished. When the vision ended, people on both worlds were forever changed. 6 months later, Alina stood on a platform in New Delhi, the same city where the story began. Beside her stood Thelox, now wearing the new uniform of the United Species Council. Captain Arizov, now Ambassador Arizov, stood on her other side. Before them stretched a crowd of humans and Kildorians, all gathered to witness the opening of the first interspecies university. "For too long, the Kildorian people denied half of our heritage," Arizov told the crowd. "We valued science but rejected mystery. We forgot that the greatest scientific discoveries begin with wonder, with questions that seem impossible to answer." Thelox stepped forward, and humans held on to their myths, even when science seemed to contradict them. "You understood something we had forgotten. That truth can come in many forms." Alina addressed the crowd last. "Today, we begin a new journey together. Not just humans and Kildorians, but all species who have been touched by the architects. We will learn from each other, combining the scientific knowledge of the Kildorians with the mythological understanding of humans and the unique perspectives of every other world." She looked up at the sky, where a faint golden light still sometimes appeared. "The universe is stranger and more wonderful than any one species could understand alone. But together, there is no mystery we cannot explore." As the university doors opened, children of both species ran in together, eager to learn. Among them were the children who would one day travel beyond their solar systems, carrying with them both scientific instruments and ancient symbols, both mathematics and stories. And somewhere beyond ordinary sight, the architects watched with something like pride as their many children finally began to understand the greatest truth of all, that the universe was never divided between science and myth. It was always both, together.